We are going live. Hey, everybody, it's showtime. Showtime, and I'm a giant nerd. All right.
do. Oh, yeah.
Ready to go live. Hello, everybody. It's a dinosaur. His name's Rex and blah 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 bloop. Do 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 do. Yeah! This episode is sponsored by Quack Alert. They are ridiculously in love with ducks. I have no clue why, but you know what? It's cool. Hey, everybody. It's Chris from the Charity Board Gamer. I'm excited tonight because we get to talk to Justin Jacobson from Restoration Games. We're going to talk a little bit about what's going on at Restoration, how Justin kind of went through his journey and saw different things like board games that just needed a little extra love and needed something to be brought back to life. But lastly, we're going to talk about Joslin Diabetes Center, and we're also going to be talking about the Children's Hospital at Shriners and how important those are to Justin and to members of the Restoration team. But Justin, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here. Happy to be on.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I always find it fun to have that little intro thing and just see the reactions of the people that are my guests. Like, seriously, this guy, really? But yeah, no, it's awesome to be able to talk a lot about board games, because one of the things that I've enjoyed is just the idea that what you all are doing as a company is taking things that might have some nostalgia or some history, like Stop Thief. When I was a kid, I was playing with that cell phone thing, entering in the code, trying to figure things out. Or Fireball Island. My brother-in-law, he's a diehard Fireball Island fan when he was younger, and so we ordered a copy of the updated version, got that for him. It was like his childhood just kind of rejuvenated it and everything. But no, it's nice to have you on tonight. So thank you very much for coming on. The question we want to start with for the night is this: what was kind of your journey? What kind of led you to, growing up? What were the games that you were really enjoying, and then what made you say, "Hey, I want to go into this industry"?
Sure. I've been a gamer my whole life. And, pretty hardcore gamer. I mean, I learned, I'll never forget, we learned the very basic D&D set. We played in fourth grade or something like the fifth grade in elementary school. And my dad and his brother, my uncle, were big gamers as well. They would play war games and D&D and all kinds of our other RPGs at the time. And they got all those first Euro games when people didn't even know what they were, the first Catan when it first came out in Puerto Rico, and all these sort of classic Euro games that we now know as classics, they got as like brand new releases that were blowing their minds, And I just grew up with it my whole life, been playing games, everything across the board, from mass market stuff to these obscure things to RPGs to whatever. And then I went to law school and I became a lawyer. My dad was a lawyer at the time. And so one of the things I used to do, and I started practicing law, is I always sort of made time to help people in the game industry. And simultaneous to this, I was also sort of got back into Dungeons and Dragons when 3rd edition came out with the open game license. And I did some self-publishing under the name of Blue Devil Games. I went to Duke Law School, so that was where that came from. And it was a lot of fun. I just enjoyed sort of being part of gaming. And one of the things I used to do every year was I would go to Gen Con and I would do a legal Q&A and just say, hey, if you have any legal questions, I'm happy to answer them. It was really just a nice opportunity to write off the trip as a business expense and meet people in the game industry and make connections and things like that. And I ended up helping a lot of people from those Q&As. Sort of the tabletop gaming industry, as soon as you get below that top tier of gaming companies, there's not a lot of in-house counsel. There's no chief legal officers at any of these game companies. And a lot of them are kind of flying blind. And for me, it was an easy opportunity to do some pro bono work and, help people draft contracts or, figure out if they were having issues with not getting paid, if they were freelancers or things like that. So it was just something I sort of just always kept my finger, in the business. And after one of those legal Q&As, a nice young woman came up to me and said, my husband's getting ready to leave Hasbro. He's got a few questions. Can we take you to dinner? That was Lindsay Davio, Rob's her husband, as I like to say. So they worked at Hasbro for a while. Lindsay wasn't there anymore. And then Rob was just getting ready to leave. He had just done Risk Legacy. Mm-hmm. And he was interested in sort of doing a legacy game outside of Hasbro. That ended up being Seafall, which ended up coming out ironically after Pandemic Legacy. But he sort of had some questions about how he could approach it. And we talked about things like, at one point there was a thought of him trademarking the term legacy game or at least I shouldn't say that, a legacy logo that sort of could be sort of a branded tech for him. But we decided not to. We thought it was, not really in the spirit of how we do game design in the business, and what things you couldn't do and that sort of thing, and reviewing contracts and stuff. So Rob and I have been friends for a little while since then, and I've always helped him with his contracts and stuff like that. And I don't know, 2015 or so, I started really getting burnt out on the practice of law. It just wasn't fulfilling for me anymore. It was, it was fine. I was making a nice living, no doubt about it. But it just was really the stress of, I was running my own practice at that point, and the nature of my practice had changed quite a bit, and it just was not rewarding anymore. And I went to lunch with some friends, and we were talking about games, and I had this idea. It was literally an idea that came to me in the shower. Kickstarter started becoming popular and as a vehicle for getting projects off the ground. And I had this idea to take an old game and modernize it. People always would talk about their Grail games. And one of these Grail games was Star Wars Queen's Gambit. And I said, well, you could redo that game, just take out the Star Wars part, redo the game. With Kickstarter, maybe I could pull it off. But it was a little ambitious to try and run our law practice and do a Kickstarter and bring a game out and all that. And I was talking to my friends at lunch one day, and they knew how sort of dissatisfied I had become with the practice of law. And they basically just encouraged me to take the leap and just, give it up. And I did. I sold the practice. So I talked to Rob first. I was like, hey, I've got this wild idea. And he said, oh, that's really cool. Like, I don't think that game's the right one to do. But we started talking about what games we could bring back and what it would be like and how we would approach it and things like that. And it was just like a sticky idea. I don't know if you've ever come across, it wouldn't let go of me. And I just had this idea. And it's funny, I'm down here in South Florida. I feel like I'm rambling here. Is that okay?
No, this is great.
Okay.
No, the one thing that I try to do more of when I do these interviews is listening. So this is good.
Did I mention I'm a lawyer? So I might inadvertently filibuster the show here, and feel free to just give me the high sign.
I'm all right with that. Go ahead.
Good. So I'm down here in South Florida, and Tom Vassel's down here from the Dice Tower. And I'd see him on game days at the game store, and we got to be friends a little bit. And I actually got to do some legal work for him and knew him. And it's funny, one of the things he would always say is, people always say, oh, I want to start a game company, because they really just, they like games. So they figure, oh, it'd be fun to start a game company. He's always, don't do that. He's always like recommending people be very careful about jumping in and just starting a game company. Mm-hmm. And I just took him aside one time. I said, look, I know, hear me out. I want to start a game company, but here's the idea. And he was like, oh, you know what? That's actually kind of a neat idea. And that was sort of like, everybody was like, when I would tell people about it, they're like, oh, that actually sounds kind of cool. And like I said, it just wouldn't let go. And I finally just ripped the Band-Aid off. I sold the law practice. And I used the funds from that essentially to start up the company. And so I would say the rest is history. It's been a ton of work since then. But fundamentally, this idea of old games and bringing them back, not talking about like reprints, and things like that, but literally games from our childhood that we loved as kids that people, they're long out of print. Like people just know them from their youth, their nostalgia, their memory of it. Bring those back so people can experience them. And a lot of, for me, like, you can tell by my beard, we're in the same boat here. We're on the oldest. A lot of us have kids and stuff. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I'd love for my kids to be able to play Dark Tower and experience that excitement that I had about that game. It's the same way, like, if I show them Star Wars for the first time, or if I let them read a book that I really liked when I was a kid. You want to share those experiences. But then also, like, I'll rewatch Star Wars just for the fun of it anyway, like that's a fond memory from my childhood, or some of these old movies or whatever it is. And the same thing's true with these games. And so we said we want to bring them back, but we didn't want to just do reprints, because we know, like, in the same way, like if you were making Star Wars today, like Star Wars is a great movie, but the special effects would be better. And, they are, like, the new Star Wars movies, the same kind of movies, but the special effects are a lot better. And you have to admit, it's kind of nice. So it's the same sort of thing, right? Take these old games, modernize them, like keep the essence of them, that spirit of them, but modernize them and bring them back so people can enjoy them in a new way, but in the thing that we loved as kids. And that's really what it was all about. And it worked. What can I say?
Well, I can say that our family has enjoyed it. I know that one of the first games that we played as a family was Fireball Island, and that was one that, of course, I never got to play it when I was a kid. That was, for me, that was the game that I wanted to play a lot as a kid. My wife had played it as a kid, and then I guess somehow, because it was like plastic style, it got stepped on at some point. It broke, and of course, Mom and Dad aren't going to buy another copy at that point. So when we got it, we were just, it was just a lot of joy for us. I mean, and then of course being able to play at a 5-player count for us, for us as a family of 5, it makes a lot of sense for us to be able to just play those games, because those are the games they're going to hit the table the most. And then of course I was introduced to Star Wars Epic Duels, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this game is great. And then all of a sudden I get introduced to Unmatched, and I'm like, this game seems very familiar. And I don't know why. And then I found out why. And it's just like, it's nice. And it looks like a lot of people are definitely in here. Christina Petrie is in here from Pentree Games. It's like, I'd love a legal Q&A. That's awesome. And of course, Kids Planning. I don't know if you've ever interacted with Kids Planning. Beautiful family. The kids are wonderful. Great how to plays. And then of course, I don't know who Jay Feast is, but Jay Feast says
Jeremy, I think his first name is, but yeah, I know he and his son actually designed Downforce boards, their own custom Downforce boards. Very cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Downforce is my group's all-time most played game.
I think I'm right. I think I recognize the avatar is why I'm saying that. So I could be wrong, but I think that's right.
Nice. Very cool. Is that yes? Yep. And that is who that is.
There we go.
Yeah, every New Year's Eve. That's really cool. Yeah, it's for us. I like the idea that you decided to go this route of taking something that was older, that had that nostalgia, and that you decided to make it kind of breathe things back into life. Now, you've been doing that. Have there been games though that you've thought about working on that are completely separate entities? And then the other question, with your legal background, how are you able to work around some of these things where originally these items were intellectual properties, and then be able to make them your own? Like, I'm curious about that, because I know that you've got certain characters that you've had to work through to get licensing with, or at least having to work with a license. I remember one of the things I had the chance to play test Buffy. And I remember Buffy, if I'm correct, wasn't it supposed to be like Buffy versus Bruce Lee at some point? Or
well, not in the same set, but we were probably playtesting them at the same time. I know we were working on them around the same time. So yeah. So, I mean, starting with the last question first, it's so the licensing thing is a whole separate thing. So it's definitely an advantage that I'm an attorney. It's something that it's sort of like a it's free labor, as it were. Like, it's what I bring to the table. So we have some stuff going on today, and someone was talking about, I'm so glad you're an attorney, Justin. I was like, yeah, I guess, that part helps out. But on the other side, obviously, my partner is Rob Davio, and he's, legendary game designer. He's been doing it for a couple decades now, and so he handles all the sort of design side of things and oversees all that. We have a few other designers on the team, Brian Neff and Noah Cohen. They're excellent. And so we got a real strong team now. I'll probably mention the other people on the team as we go through the thing tonight. But it's always different in terms of like getting the rights to the game and what rights we need and whether certain things we may not need rights for. And so it's always a different approach. And that's one of the things we look at when we're looking at older games to bring back is, how can we get it done? And so sometimes it means, so for Star Wars Epic Duels, we didn't get the Star Wars license, but we knew the conceit of it, of mashing up two heroes from different, genres or whatever, that we would want to get some licensed sets. And we had actually talked with the people over at Mondo. That's like all they do is license stuff, these movie posters and games and puzzles and tiki mugs and all kinds of stuff. Really cool group of people. Been really fortunate to work with them. They have amazing aesthetic style too, which we knew we liked. We've always strived to have this sort of high quality art and production in our game. So that was a good fit. And there's a guy over there, Tim Weish, I forget his official title, but he's essentially the head of their legal and licensing department. And he's just this licensing wizard, basically. So we have these essentially pitch meetings when we're thinking about sets to do. And Tim will always pass judgment like, oh, that one we might be able to get, or forget that one, you'll never be able to get that one, and stuff like that. It's fun, though. It's fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. The next Unmatched series that was announced is related around Marvel, and so that's interesting because of the fact that you're able to bring in characters from basically like the Defenders, and it looks like you've got my favorite, I think, is Squirrel Girl.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, one of the only Marvel heroes that could defeat Thanos single-handedly.
Yeah.
So,
no, it was a lot of fun. I mean, when so Marvel got interested, actually, they saw the first Jurassic Park set, and I would say we've been fortunate, but the team is amazing. Unmatched looks amazing. We got Oliver Barrett did the original art, but we've got a bunch of other artists that have worked on different sets. But then behind the scenes, Jason Taylor from our team and Lindsay Davio from our team is now on Restoration Games, doing most of the graphic design. A few people on the Mondo side, they've had a few people come in and out. Right now it's Chris Billheimer's working on it, and they just look amazing, right? So when the Marvel people saw the Jurassic Park set, they were like, oh yeah, and there are people essentially in Marvel who were like fans of Unmatched, and so it made it a lot easier to go in and pitch them on this game when they're already kind of keen on it and they know that the product's going to come out looking really spiffy. And then once we got the right to do that, or the sort of the green light to go ahead and do it, we were trying to design the sets, and we got this sort of roster of heroes that were available to choose from, and we were like finally crafting the sets, and we wanted to make sure they were sort of went together, but then they also could be. We were already even then like thinking about like what kind of play style would it be? What's their power level? That's something we've want to be. Did we want to come out first thing with an Avengers set? I mean, obviously, Avengers were super popular. Just came off that whole wave of Marvel movies, and we sort of decided that was closing down, and we knew some of these new these heroes were going to be in some of these new properties. There's a Ms. Marvel TV show coming out, a Moon Knight TV show coming out, and also that they weren't heroes that were already saturated in the market. Like there's some great Marvel games out there, and a lot of them have a lot of those sort of more traditional heroes. And so we sort of our MO, we wanted to zig when others were zagging, and tried to create sets that were a little more interesting. So, but it was a lot of fun. Those meetings were great. Like, oh, let's do this hero, let's do this hero, and then starting again, think about how would you represent Squirrel Girl in an Unmatched deck, right? So
And it looks like Josh from Meeple Gamers is on here saying hi. So, hello, Josh. The one, though, that I'd love to see in an unmatched game, and it's only because with Marvel, if you're able to do something like this, who wouldn't want to be Stan the Man Lee?
It's interesting. I don't think Marvel has the rights to Stan Lee. I think Stan Lee's estate does, but that's an interesting one. I thought about a Fred Hembeck one would be funny.
That'd be pretty cool.
But yeah, I don't know if we'll go that far afield. But you know, the sets that we have coming out are we're pretty excited about. We've got more stuff in the works too. You know, it's funny. I mean, Marvel we've been working on for over a year now, and the stuff that we're working on now we won't be able to announce for another year. So I know some stuff you all don't know.
That's all right. I mean, don't get me wrong. We all look forward to it when we get those announcements. So
it's like a running joke in the company that I'm the biggest blabbermouth on the whole team. And ironic, obviously, considering I was a lawyer. I think that's what it is. I was always, I always had to worry about attorney-client confidentiality. And I'm unfettered now, so it's just sheer willpower. And not the threat of an ethical charge against me. It's a lot harder.
Now, like you said, we both have families. What's been the games that you all have really enjoyed around the family, whether it be from restoration or from just acquisitions and purchasing at your game store?
So it's funny. My wife is not a gamer at all. I feel like I've told this story before, but before we had kids, we had literally played one game together, and that was after Hurricane Wilma. We had no power for a whole week, and we played one game of Scrabble, and that was it. My wife is just not a gamer. Since we've had kids, though, she'll participate if we're playing with the kids or whatever. And the kids have gotten older, and they're gamers. They're into some of the games. Certainly, they help me play test and they help try out some of the games. They like to try my games out. One of them, my Jara, she's my youngest. She's kind of a big gamer, so we like to play a lot of games. So usually it's 2-player games for us. She likes Seven Wonders Duel and Caper. Those are two of our favorites. And then she likes to play on Match too. She'll beat me on Match pretty regularly. And then as a family, we enjoyed Wingspan. I know my family really liked that one. So yeah, we play a lot of different games. I mean, I'm usually trying something out, whether it's and a lot of one of the things that's kind of fun is when we're considering an older game, we'll get the original game and try it out. And sometimes they're a bit clunky, and sometimes they're like, all right, I think we can call this one. We know where we might want to fix it up, but they're usually good sports about that as well.
No, you can definitely tell because I think Epic Duels was dice, and you all switched it to mainly cards.
Yeah, so the biggest changes we made was to the board and movement system, and then the line of sight system. I guess which is also part of the boards. And basically, what it was, it's the thing that always sort of bothered me about Epic Duels. Very good game, obviously, but they wanted a very simple line of sight system, and it's basically like draw a line, and can you see them? Which is weird, not like a line like a tape measure, but like an actual line of squares, right? Like you would if you had a line of squares that were unbroken, you could see them. Which is so you could have two people who could, ranged fighter who could see them, and as long as if that person moved one square to the left, they weren't in the same row anymore. All of a sudden, couldn't shoot them, which just seemed weird to us. And it's funny, I'd always sort of been aware of the that Tannhauser line of sight system. Mostly, frankly, because Sam Healy, when he was on the Dice Tower, used to regularly bring it up and say, hey, someone should bring this line of sight system back. And I sort of always had it in the back of my mind. And when we were getting ready to do this game, I was like, this is perfect for this. Because we want a game that's quick. We want simple line of sight. So it's a matter of just like, do they have the same color on their space? It's line of sight, easy peasy. And other than that, and the movement system, we just sort of standardized movement a little bit, rather than relying on that roll of that dice. So, yeah.
I could seriously keep talking about games all the time, but I think we need to talk about some other things as well. One of the things that we were going to talk about, though, is the Shriners Hospital for children. I'm going to pull that up real quick, and I'm going to let you kind of discuss it as we go through it.
Sure. So when Rob and I started the company, one of the things we wanted to do was be sure that we're giving back to the community as well. And we picked these two charities, Shriners Hospital for Children and Joslin Diabetes Center, because they're personal to us. So my daughter, my oldest daughter, Jaden, was born with a limb difference in her left hand. And so we've been going to Shriners Hospital ever since she was born. Ultimately very lucky. It's been sort of minimal. It's funny. People don't even realize that it's there until they really just take a minute and look. But when we would go to Shriners, we'd see all these other kids with very serious issues. So it's a whole sort of a string of hospitals around the country, some of them specializing in different areas. But one of the things is orthopedics and people with limb differences or bone issues, things like that, spinal issues. They also do a burn treatment and things like that for kids. Amazing organization and charity. Completely free. No matter, if don't have anything or whatever it is, completely free. And the best care in the world, like literally some of the leading research and stuff is going on in these hospitals. It's just an amazing thing to have a resource like that for kids who are having these challenges. And it's interesting. I don't know if it's where you are, but we're getting a ton of commercials now for them. And you see these kids, and these kids are amazing. So when you go to the hospital and you see these kids, and you would think like with these very challenging conditions that they're dealing with, and they're just smiles on their faces, and a lot of that is because of the care that the hospital gives, the opportunity they have, the support groups that they have, and things like that. It's really quite an amazing charity, Shriners.
Yeah, you can see all these locations and some of the things that they work specifically with, which is really neat. I like that. Because for me, the closest ones for me would be around the Kentucky, Ohio, and Pennsylvania area. So,
well, we go to the one in Philadelphia, ironically, because there's one in Tampa that's not too far from me. I'm down here in Florida, but they principally specialize in burn treatment. And the one up in Philadelphia is one of the leading hand orthopedic doctors in the country there. Like I said, to get that kind of care and treatment for free, and additionally, he's an amazing guy, really. So
that's awesome. That is really cool. Yeah, it's worth the trip when you can do what's best for your kid. I mean, the fact that they're able to take care of these things without it costing the parents is very big, because you think about it, a medical bill is not cheap at all. It's when you get the bill later in the mail for other things, when you go to see a doctor, and even though you may have insurance, sometimes it just doesn't feel like you're really insured. It feels like it's like, okay, we're going to go ahead and cover this amount, but we're not going to cover all of this. Like, especially if you get anesthesia. Anesthesia is one of those things that if you're not going through, you've got to make sure that the insurance matches up with the anesthesia, because if you have to go under it, it's not always the same stipulations for that as it is for the actual surgery. So the idea that this actually helps out with families and helps out with kids is great, because we've been doing a lot with children's hospitals and stuff, and just it's been good. It's always good to see organizations making it possible for families to not feel the stress and the weights of the financial burdens that come from a visit to a hospital. And then that way you can do what you're supposed to do as a parent, is be a parent, be present, and be able to be there, which is great. And some of these places, I know some of these places, they even offer like some housing type things while you're at least staying for the visits, which is great, which is so good. But yeah,
they've got Shriners in particular, one in Philadelphia, and I know some of the other ones too. They've got, as you say, some residency opportunities and play areas for some of the kids, because they might be having to stay at the hospital for a number of days. And I remember we once we brought some of the games over to the hospital at a place where we go, just to put them in the room there, because kids, they want to play games. They don't want to have to read a 10-year-old Good Housekeeping magazine in the waiting room, right?
Or the oldest 1980s issues of Highlights. Don't get me wrong.
Yes,
Find the difference between the two is great, but you know that when you open one of those, some kids already circled them. Some kids already circled the differences.
Yeah.
So but this is a great charity. So I like that you are sharing this one. And for folks that are interested, I put it in the link. It's in the chat right now. If you want to find out more about this specific charity, it's right there in the chat. And also, if you're interested and you want to somehow, maybe you know somebody that's needing that financial help to be able to take care of their child in that way, maybe there's something where they didn't know that this is out there, let them know about these organizations. And then also, if you are able to be a wallet in that situation, click on donate and go ahead and you can actually make a donation right here. And then there's other ways where you can give, whether it be volunteering or anything else of that nature, or if you want to do fundraisers and stuff. So, yeah. And remember, donations are tax deductible. It's tax season, folks. Why not? So that's something that we can do. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop that one. I'm going to pull up the other one that we want to talk about tonight, and that is Joslin Diabetes Center. And so I'm going to quickly get that shared.
Yeah, while you're bringing that up, like I said, Rob and I sort of both picked these for personal reasons. Rob is a type 1 diabetic, which, from birth, obviously, is what that means. And so it's something he's literally dealt with. And I know he's been going to Joslin for, I don't know how long, but as long as certainly a very long time. And they sort of help him. I mean, from when he was up till, an adult now, where as technologies change or treatments change, and it's a place where he can always go for his sort of annual checkup to monitor that. And I know he just recently had some new technology he was using, and it's kind of amazing some of the stuff they're doing in the area of diabetes treatment now, in terms of monitoring that insulin level and how you deal with that. It's just some of the technology they're doing now is unbelievable. And again, a great place if you've got questions about the diabetes, things like that. That's what they specialize in, and it's a great organization. I know Rob has been going there for a while and supporting them for a while, and I know it's something that's very sort of near and dear to his heart.
I know one of the things that they're trying to work here specifically at Joslin is they're trying to do as much medical research as possible to somehow find an end to diabetes, which is really cool. So I think that's one of the things. I think that's even in their about section. But let me pull that up because I was reading through it earlier. Yeah, it had some education. There it is right there. Mission to cure diabetes. So, I mean, that's great. That's awesome. I know we were talking right before you came on. We were talking about how we've dealt with stuff where when we lived in Newport News, we were helping an organization that dealt with juvenile diabetes research. And I mean, for anything to make life easier, why not? So, and yeah, and see here, Kids Planning saying, yeah, one of our friends is type 1. It's such an art to balance the disease. New research is awesome. And that is the truth. That is the truth. I mean,
yeah, I mean, you see these things. I know there was an ad just recently that, all talking about the finger sticks, right? Like it just a few years ago, you'd have to test your blood all the time and literally like stab your finger with a little needle and take that blood test.
Yep.
Now they've got these ways where it's like app enabled to your device that's sort of fixed to your skin there, and you can get it out without having to stick your finger every time. So it's amazing the research that's going on in general, like in the medical field, and I'm constantly amazed at some of these breakthroughs, and it's sort of reaffirming. It's funny, we had this pandemic in 2020, and to think that now the vaccine is already rolling out compared to how long vaccines used to take to develop. It seems like in recent years there have been some sort of pot shots taken at science, or science, has been overlooked or questioned or whatever. But the breakthroughs that people are doing in science these days are just life-changing. So I'm very grateful for that sort of stuff.
Now, somebody brought up a question actually on here. It's saying, last year when you guys gave copies of Fireball Island to folks for a donation, was it to these places?
So yeah, we ended up we have made donations, and so interestingly, the original plan. So what we did last year, for people who don't know, is we had sort of an old stock. It was the old box the first box we did, which everyone hated, and so we redid the box for the next printing, and then we had some old stock with the old box, and we didn't want to put that into distribution because we thought people would get upset. So we had this old version. It's the same game, but the box was just different. And so we did a pay what you can model where we basically said, hey, pay whatever you can, and we'll donate. So what we tried to do is we were trying to do a system where we could donate it to charity directly through the proceeds of the thing. But apparently there's all kinds of, as a lawyer, I've discovered there's all kinds of legal requirements to do that sort of thing, which kind of makes sense if you think about it. And that you don't want people saying, hey, we'll donate the proceeds to charity, and then they're doing all sorts of shady things where they're taking money out and things like that or whatever. But the short version is we sort of just did it on our own, and we have certainly made donations to both of these charities in the past. So it wasn't directly part of that, but ultimately, it's money all comes from the same pot as far as the company goes. So yeah, ultimately, yes.
Yep. And it looks like they're working with, 14 full professors, Harvard Medical School. That's really cool. They're working through clinical behavioral outcomes, genetics, immunobiology. Wow. Islet cell and regenerative biology, vascular cell biology. Those are pretty awesome. And then they're dealing a lot with genetics, which is that's just interesting. The fact that they're putting a lot of interest in genetic research it makes a lot of sense to actually start doing that, especially for people that are type 1. You've got to try to figure out, okay, where in genetics does that happen? Where does that begin? What causes one person to have diabetes from the beginning versus the person that is getting it later on in life from just different things going on in their life? So, there's a big difference between type 2 and type 1. Type 1, you've got it for life. Type 2, sometimes you can get yourself out of those situations. But yeah, no, that's awesome. That is really cool. But yeah, and there's a section where actually at the bottom where it said research, you can actually make a donation on here as well. That takes you to a separate page. It won't take you to the same one. But yeah, no, that's nice. I like the fact that is something that's both close to both of your hearts, and that you chose to make it a point that these benefit from the work that you're doing, which is really cool.
Yeah, in both of our instances, we've gotten so much from these organizations over the years, we sort of wanted to give back. But it's also true that they're both organizations that really sort of deal with kids. And, the field that we're in, like making games, yes, we're hobby gamers, a lot of adults and all that, but ultimately, that the joy of bringing that joy to kids or whatever is something that's always been a passion for us. And so we like to that our giving is also sort of aligns with that as well.
Yeah. And I agree. It does make a lot of sense to do a lot of things that are benefiting children, because it's going to make their lives a lot easier, maybe easier than it was for us. And God forbid anything like that has to happen to my kids where we have to make one of those emergency visits, because what's an emergency? It's never prepared. You're never financially ready for it. So when you have those emergencies happen and you need to go, like in situations of whether it be orthopedics or cancer or just anything of that nature, you've got to stop everything. You've got to go. You've got to make it a point to take care of your child. And you don't know what you're going to do. So when you have organizations like this that help, or an example where a child is born with type 1 diabetes, how are you going to help them through the whole process and the journey? To be able to have those organizations that help with that makes a big difference as well. So
yeah, it's sort of what you alluded to before too, with both of these organizations. When you have a kid who's got a medical condition like that, one of the big things you say as a parent is, in addition to the financial stuff, obviously, but you don't know. It might, like, if you don't have type 1 diabetes and your kid does, you don't know. You've got tons of questions, and sure, you can run onto WebMD and read on stuff, but you got to be careful what you do there. It's nice to have a place like this where you can ask questions and have them answered, and have people take time to explain to you and prepare you for what you're going to need to deal with or whatever. And as you say, that gives you time. That gives the parents time and opportunity to be a parent to that kid also. Like that's sort of the second problem. Like the kid might have this condition, but then also if the parents spending all their time and effort and money and resources dealing with the condition, then they're losing out on having that's all that stuff going to the kid. So both of these organizations are really good in that way. And, that's, like I said, that's why we're big supporters of both of them.
That's awesome. Well, Justin, I want to say thank you very much for coming on tonight. I really do appreciate. I appreciate the fact that you took the time to talk about these charities, because I think it's important for us as people, as we're looking for ways to help and help our communities. Sometimes we don't know where to go, and so it's very important for us to be able to find the outlets that we can find, to know that there are places where we can get the proper education about these things. Like if I was trying to learn, like you said, there's ways for me to learn and be educated by going to that actual site about diabetes. Or, if I wanted to know, okay, where are the places I can go to take my child to make sure that they're safe and protected and able to get the treatment that they need, there it is right there. There's like facilities within maybe a couple hours from me, which is great. So being able to do that is awesome. Yeah, but thank you for taking the time talking about these things. I truly appreciate it. Of course, I love talking about games as well, but the biggest thing here is we also talk about gathering to help good causes. So,
well, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Anytime. And it looks like a couple of comments on here. Yep, Kids Planning, love you all. Great people. And Jay Feast, this has been a great show. Thank you very much, Jay Feast. Thanks for sharing so much info about these two organizations. That's awesome. I'm glad that you got something out of it. And like I said, if anybody's interested, both of those charities I have put in the description, and I have also put it in the chat. And if you're seeing it, it's still going to keep scrolling all the way till I'm done. So, thank you all very much. And folks, remember, if we can gather at the table, we can do the same for a good cause. So we're going to go ahead on out, and we'll wish everybody a good night. So thank you all very much. Bye.
Bye.
We also want to thank our sponsor, Greenbrier Games. Be on the lookout for lost ones hitting the Pledge Manager soon.